With all the conversation going on about Avengers Doomsday, with the latest drop, the teaser trailers, and really the conversation that's been going on for years now about superhero fatigue and the state of comic book movies, I wanted to add my 2 cents as a longtime comic book fan and somebody who's largely followed the MCU up to this point. Are comic book stories running out of gas on the big screen? See, the problem is the nature of superhero storytelling as a whole, and really the nature of us comic book fans. When comic book movies started, they couldn't be taken seriously to save their life. They were not credible forms of storytelling. We thought they were, as diehard fans, anytime that we got a video game adaptation, every time that we got a comic book adaptation, we clung to that because we would take what we could get. Now, we're talking about most of the top 20 highest grossing movies of all time being made up of superhero adaptations. So the medium's come a long way. But there's this one continuous problem that they seem to be running into. And it's this idea that they are adapting bits and pieces of stories from an industry where characters don't really age and continuity can largely change from writer to writer. So the fact that they were already able to get over 10 years of storytelling out of adapting comic books onto the large screen and in one overarching universe is a huge deal. And now it feels like they are starting to pivot and displaying something that really wasn't Marvel's strongest suit to begin with. This is where we have to talk about the big two, Marvel and DC. Marvel was known for a lot of grounded storytelling. That's usually where you would get more government espionage, more stories that were relatable, whereas DC was generally known for their gods among men, these larger than life figures that stood as pantheons of virtue and courage and strength and all of these things, coupled with now you couple that with sci-fi storytelling where you get a lot of multiverse stuff, a lot of dimension hopping stuff, those kinds of stories. It's not to say Marvel never did one and DC never did the other, but those are general pillars that each one could be known for throughout the years. Marvel is going into a time where they're trying to emphasize the multiverse and trying to bring all of the various pieces all together under one house now that acquisitions have been made and these different IPs are now returning home. Naturally, they want to integrate the mutants in. They want to integrate in the Fantastic Four. And that's why we're getting more and more storytelling with those different corners. That's why we're getting a Fantastic Four movie. That's why we're hearing a lot about the Fox characters coming into the MCU and the X-Men and all of that. The issue is, though, comic book fans are a little fickle. They don't get their flavor, and it's very easy for them to say, "Oh, I'm no longer into this. Oh, this isn't my version of the hero or of the story." It's the nature of comic book fans. There are some runs on certain characters, even my favorite characters that I myself have ignored or I'm not as into because I don't like what a particular writer or a particular artist did with those characters. Now, you put that together with an industry where actors are not really going to want to be playing a particular role for all of these years or for decades to come. Now, one of the biggest arguments that I have heard about the current state of the MCU is they no longer know what they're doing. They've lost the thread. There's no continuous storyline happening. Like I said, Marvel is not really known for multiverse in the same way that DC is. They went from telling a very grounded story to focusing on a much more abstract story. Now, you couple that with the state of the world for the last 5 years and all of the ridiculous things that have taken place that have affected their ability to be able to tell one continuous story. You couple that with personal woes of some of the people that are involved that have forced them to pivot, and now you have a subject that was already very ambiguous, and now you take that ambiguous story that they were telling, that abstract story that they were telling, you couple it with that instinct to say, "Oh, they finished that story. This feels like a new story. This feels like a new run. The characters that I have been with are no longer around. This is no longer my Avengers. This is no longer my MCU." You couple that with the state of the world for the last 5 years, and then you sprinkle in then this necessity to come in with over 10 years worth of experience with these characters and all of these different TV shows on top of it, each one being multi-episode arcs and each one having episodes that are like an hour long, and it can feel like it's just better to jump off the bandwagon. And I'm here to say, don't jump off yet, because I fundamentally believe that the future of superhero storytelling is bright. Part of what made people invest in the last 10 plus years of the MCU is the story that was told, the characters that were developed over time. We get that scene at the end of Endgame because Iron Man 1 took a C class hero and made him a mainstay in the comics. Because for those of you that don't know, the comics chase the movies. It's not the other way around. Many changes have happened in the comics because of the success of the movies. And I'll be the first one to admit it feels like they have been going for style over substance over the last several movies in the last several years. Part of the reason for that is they're depicting the multiverse, y'all. They're depicting the Marvel cosmic hierarchy. And in order to do that, you need to start putting new puzzle pieces on the board. It's not as simple as introducing one singular character like they did with Thanos. That was easier to do than to pull the camera lens out and show, okay, this last 10 years of storytelling is sitting in a much larger context, in a much larger universe, in a much larger multiverse. Obviously, they've hinted at that with going to different planets, with showcasing different races, different things like that. But they are turning the volume up on that all the way up to 11. And it's hard to be able to go from grounded storytelling to huge and bombastic. And while I'll be the first one to say, man, there's a lot of TV shows, man, there's a lot of content, I think the TV shows have been the perfect medium to start to really unpack the different timelines and the larger context for everything. And I think that's part of why you see the success in something like Loki, because Loki is being used as an agent to really expand upon this bigger context. And the way that they were able to continue to flesh that out using Deadpool and Wolverine, this chef's kiss love letter to the Fox era of movies was masterful. And the truth is, yeah, there is a little bit of fan service that has been happening. There is a whole generation of us that grew up with these characters that were showcased in Deadpool and Wolverine, that grew up with these characters that were showcased in No Way Home, that appreciate the calls and the nods in something like Multiverse of Madness. Also, they're trying new things. For a long time, we've talked about the Marvel formula, the MCU formula of making movies, and we have cried out for something different. Well, look at the Eternals. That's something different. Look at Multiverse of Madness. That's something different. Look at No Way Home. That's something different. Okay, let them experiment because you just might find something new that you didn't know you liked. They're introducing new flavors into the ice cream shop. Let them cook. Let them try because that's how we get another 10 years of amazing storytelling is by trying something new. But I don't think we are going to be in this experimental phase for very long because we are rapidly approaching Avengers Doomsday. And I fundamentally believe that we are going to get a soft reboot out of this. But on the road to the next set of Avengers movies, we have to talk about the mutants and RDJ shaped elephant in the room. I myself, I also found myself wondering if they just broke glass in case of emergency by bringing back RDJ. But more and more is coming out that the original plan was that we were going to get Kang in his various forms as the Beyonder, as the different iterations of Kang, and the driving tangible force behind Secret Wars. But the idea was the grand evil that they were trying to stop from coming was going to be Doctor Doom, and that we were going to get Doctor Doom. The issue that I have with that is Kang was never the Beyonder. Kang was never Doctor Doom. So, in a way, we're getting something that's a bit more accurate to the comics anyway. And there's a way to tell this story either from making him a variant from the worlds that were set up in Multiverse of Madness or retconning that Tony Stark, as we knew him, was always Victor Von Doom or a variant of Victor Von Doom that was adopted by the Starks and renamed to Tony. Maybe the maybe the original Tony Stark passed away and they adopted Victor Von Doom and he was a variant. And now we get a different version. And the thing about Doom is he is a villain with substance. He's not like Thanos. He's not just mustache twirling, egomaniacal, out and out villainous. He is a character with depth. He is a character with nuance. And the fact of the matter is, RDJ is a good enough actor to be able to pull that off. And we are setting up the story of the incursions, different universes within the multiverse colliding with each other. It's a perfect setup for Doom to pull out versions of the Avengers from these different universes and bringing them in to support his cause, because there's a measure of sympathy to the fact that their worlds are being destroyed by the main MCU universe. The fact of the matter is, the MCU is the biggest dog in the yard when it comes to big screen superhero adaptations. I don't ever see that going away. I don't think that that's a problem. Let them do what they're doing, but if they are successful and if fans give them a chance, it ensures a much wider door for others to come along too. That superhero storytelling is a proven commodity, and now the door is open for other people to tell their own versions of superhero stories on the big screen. James Gunn is hard at work over at DC, creating one shared universe within DC. I, for one, am stoked. I, for one, am excited that we live in a time where there's more instead of less. So let him cook. Let him make more instead of less. Support new and different stories with our buying power, because if these movies are successful, we have a whole new world. We have an entirely new landscape. And if these movies are successful, where do we go from here? Well, in the comics, you get Secret Wars, where God Emperor Doom becomes the Beyonder, gets the power of the Beyonder, who is a cosmic being, for those of you that don't know. And he basically takes bits and pieces of different universes and creates Battle World. He creates his utopia. I think that's what we are building towards. I think we're going to get bits and pieces of each one of these universes, and it's ultimately going to lead to this huge moment where all of these different versions, and we're going to get all of the toys dumped out on the ground, and the entire toy chest is going to get emptied for one big moment. And then from that, we're going to get a soft reboot where we're going to get a world where the mainline characters that we've known and loved will exist, where the Fantastic Four will exist, where the mutants, probably in different versions, will exist, and we will get new iterations of these different characters like we've been asking for. But let's put a bow on what came before it and say, hey, in true comic book fashion, it's all a part of one giant multiverse. Why not? All of the toys are now in the same toy chest. Let's tell a huge, grandiose story. Like I said, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I have to laugh that it doesn't matter what the medium is. Comic book fans are going to be comic book fans. Comic book storytelling is going to be comic book storytelling. My 2 cents on the whole thing, have they run out of steam? Absolutely not. Were they hit with a whole bunch of really weird circumstances and it's felt like a rudderless ship for a little while? Absolutely. But I believe wholeheartedly the future is bright for superhero storytelling, especially once we cross that threshold of a soft reboot. And like I said, the bigger the landscape, the more opportunity for more and different stories to be told, for unique stories to be told. So give them a chance. Okay, it's not the MCU. That's fine. Give it a chance. Who knows? You just might like it. All right. Peace, geeks.